Finding Santa by Teddy Snuggletail for Comfy Corner Time. Many, many moons ago, in the snowy back garden of the Carter family, played Oliver. It was nearing Christmas. There were still 2 weeks to go, but a fresh blanket of snow had made it feel all the more special. Soon it would be supper and bed, and he hoped the snow would still be there in the morning. That night, whilst he slept snug in his warm, cosy bed, he was suddenly awoken by a bump and a thump. It had come from the garden by the trees. He jumped out of bed and peered through the curtains, being careful not to be seen. He squinted, puzzled, then pinched his face, ouch, to make sure he was awake. What had he seen? In the morning, after wolfing down a hearty breakfast, he donned his winter warmers and headed out the door. No, he wasn't dreaming. There by the trees a messy scene greeted him. There was a mishmash of sled marks, footprints and animal prints leading off into the distance. Curious and a little bit concerned, Oliver began to follow. "Oliver! Oliver! Come back!" Ava, his big sister, was calling to him from the porch. She chased after him. "Where are you going?" she asked, a little abruptly. "I need to find Father Christmas. He needs my help," he explained. Ava, frustrated by her little brother's silliness, crossed her fingers and toes whilst blurting out, "Father Christmas isn't real!" Oliver, fueled by tears and determination, pushed on, if only to prove his sister wrong. She could be so mean sometimes. "It's not safe!" Ava shouted after him, before returning to the house to call her parents for help. By this time, Oliver was gone. Ava, her parents and the entire town formed a search party. They trudged into the snowy woodland, calling his name. "Oliver! Oliver! Oliver!" But to no avail. A fresh blizzard blew in, and his barely visible little tracks disappeared into the deepening snow. Fear gripped at the hearts of his pursuers, worried for the little man's safety. Meanwhile, deep in the heart of the woodland, Oliver too was finding it hard to see the tracks. The light was fading, and the heavy snow was stinging his face. It was so cold, his breath froze into little crystals right before his very eyes. Exhausted and frightened, Oliver settled down under a tree, shivering and crying. He wanted his mummy. Finally, cocooned in a nest of fresh snow, he fell asleep. He awoke to steamy, warm breath on his face. A soft, snuffly nose was nudging him. Slowly he roused and found himself looking into the big, soft brown eyes of a reindeer. To Oliver's surprise, it seemed to smile, then speak. "Oh dear, what have we here?" Oliver reached out and touched the creature's nose. It was warm and velvety. "Come on, young man. Clamber on up. Let's get you home. Safe, eh?" Oliver climbed clumsily onto the reindeer's back, wrapping his arms round him for warmth. But I need to find Father Christmas," Oliver said. "He's had an accident and needs my help." The reindeer chuckled. "Don't you worry about him, Oliver. He's okay." "Do you know him?" Oliver asked curiously and somewhat in awe. "Know him? Why, he and I go back a long way," replied the reindeer. Oliver realised the reindeer had called him by name. "How do you know my name?" "I know all the children's names," replied the reindeer. "I'm Rudolph, by the way." He looked around at the boy with a grin and a cheeky wink. Rudolph and Oliver soared through the night sky, their silhouettes twinkling with magic. Back home, Ava sat on the back steps, staring at the woods where Oliver had disappeared. She had been there for what seemed like an eternity when a noise pricked up her ears. Out onto the snow-covered lawn there floated a reindeer. Huddled snugly on his back was— yes, it was— "Oliver!" she cried, springing to her feet and running towards him. Ava wrapped her arms around her little brother, hugging him tight. "I told you Father Christmas was real," whispered Oliver. Peering over his shoulder, she saw, standing by a tree, Father Christmas, with a twinkle in his eye. He smiled and nodded before joining Rudolph and disappearing into the snowy night. Ava gasped in amazement. "Yes, he is. Yes, he is."